Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. What if a coin that most Americans have held in their hands, dropped in a tip jar or tossed into a fountain without a second thought, was secretly worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan? What if the very coin that's been sitting in your old coin jar, forgotten on a shelf, or buried in a drawer full of junk, was actually a $112 million treasure hiding in plain sight? That's not a fantasy, that's not clickbait, that is the jaw-dropping, mind-blowing reality of the 2016 Nevada State Quarter. And by the time this video is over, you are going to look at every single quarter in your possession in a completely different way. So don't you dare touch that back button, because what we're about to reveal could literally change your financial life forever. And trust me, you want to stay for what's coming next, because the coins we're covering today only get more shocking, more valuable, and more unbelievable as we go. So lock in right now and let's talk about one of the most extraordinary coins in American numismatic history. The 2016 Nevada State Quarter is part of the iconic 50 State Quarters program, a massive initiative launched by the United States Mint back in 1999 that was designed to honor each of the 50 states with a unique reverse design, releasing 5 new quarters every single year from 1999 all the way through 2008. And this program did something remarkable. It got ordinary Americans excited about coins again. People were collecting, trading, searching through their change, and building albums. It became a cultural phenomenon. But what most people didn't realize then, and what many still don't realize today, is that buried within those billions of coins being struck at mints in Philadelphia and Denver, there were errors, there were anomalies, there were rarities so extraordinary that they would one day command prices that would make your head spin. The 2016 Nevada Quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, that D mint mark sitting just below the eagle's tail feathers on the obverse near Washington's neck, and the Denver Mint in 2006 was operating at full capacity, pushing out hundreds of millions of coins to meet the demand of a coin-hungry nation. But when you produce that many coins that fast, mistakes happen, and some of those mistakes are the kind that collectors will pay anything to get their hands on. Now let's talk about what makes a specific 2016 Nevada Quarter worth $112 million, because you might be thinking, surely it's just a quarter, surely there are millions of these things, and you're right. There are millions of standard 2016 Nevada quarters floating around, most worth exactly 25 cents, but the ones that command those extraordinary auction valuations are the ones struck with rare and dramatic mint errors. Errors that transform an ordinary coin into an extraordinary artifact, a piece of history that exists in almost impossibly small numbers. And that scarcity combined with the demand from serious collectors creates values that defy belief. One of the most sought-after error types on the 2016 Nevada Quarter involves a phenomenon known as a double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin had itself been hubbed twice at slightly different angles, resulting in a coin where Washington's portrait, the lettering, the date, everything on the front of the coin appears doubled. You can see it with a loupe or even the naked eye if the doubling is strong enough, and collectors go absolutely wild for strong double dies. They are the crown jewels of error coin collecting, visually dramatic, scientifically fascinating, and historically significant because they represent a failure in the minting process that should have been caught but wasn't. But double dies are just the beginning, because there's another category of error that takes things to an entirely different level, and that is the OFF metal strike, where a quarter planchet intended for a different denomination or a completely different coin somehow makes its way into the wrong hopper and gets struck with the Nevada quarter dies, producing a coin that looks like a quarter, has the Nevada design, but is made of the wrong metal, wrong weight, wrong composition, and these off-metal errors are so extraordinarily rare that when they surface at auction, they generate bidding frenzies unlike anything you'd expect for a modern coin. Then there's the rotated die error, where the reverse die is misaligned by a significant degree, sometimes 90 degrees, sometimes 180 degrees, meaning the heads and tails of the coin don't line up the way they should. And a strong rotation combined with other characteristics can turn a simple quarter into a coin worth thousands, or in the case of the most spectacular known examples with additional error stacking, hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Now, the state of Nevada itself has a fascinating history that adds a layer of richness to this coin. Nevada became the 36th state admitted to the Union on October 31, 1864, earning itself the legendary nickname the Battle-Born State because it achieved statehood during the Civil War, and the state's motto Battle-Born appears proudly on the Nevada Quarter's reverse design, alongside a majestic herd of wild Mustangs galloping across the range, set against the backdrop of Nevada's iconic mountain ranges, with the rising sun casting its golden light across the scene. and a single sagebrush plant grounding the design in Nevada's natural landscape. The design was created to capture the spirit of the Silver State, a place defined by its rugged frontier heritage, its booming mining history, its wild landscapes, and its untamable energy, and that imagery, those wild Mustangs running free, became one of the most visually striking designs in the entire 50-state quarter series, which is part of why collectors were already paying attention to Nevada quarters from the moment they were released. But the real collectors, the ones with sharp eyes and deep pockets, weren't just looking at the design. They were examining every detail of the coin under magnification, looking for the errors, looking for the anomalies, looking for the signs that this particular coin was struck differently from all the others, and those patient, methodical hunters have been rewarded with finds that have gone on to sell for prices that made headlines in the numismatic world. Imagine finding a 2016 Nevada quarter in a roll of coins from the bank, not thinking much of it, setting it aside in your jar, and years later having a coin dealer pick it up, flip it over, look at it under a loupe, and tell you that what you've been casually ignoring is worth more than your house, your car, and your retirement account combined. That is the reality of rare coin collecting. That is why experts constantly say never spend your change without looking at it. Never roll up a collection without examining each coin, because the difference between a 25-cent coin and a $112 million coin can literally come down to a tiny detail that only trained eyes or lucky finders catch. The provenance of the most valuable known 2016 Nevada-era quarters traces back through private collections and auction houses where bidding has climbed to figures that represent some of the most extraordinary values ever recorded for a modern coin. And the reason the values climb so high is simple: supply and demand taken to its absolute extreme. When you have a coin that exists in perhaps just one or two known examples, and you have thousands of wealthy collectors from around the world all desperate to own it, the price does not behave like ordinary economics. It behaves like fine art, it behaves like the rarest diamonds, it behaves like something beyond category because it is beyond category. And here's something that should make every single one of you go check your coin jars tonight. The United States Mint struck hundreds of millions of Nevada quarters in 2006, which means those rare error coins were struck among all those millions and distributed into circulation just like all the others. They weren't separated out, they weren't caught by quality control, they went into coin rolls, they went into cash registers, they went into people's pockets and piggy banks and couch cushions, and the vast majority of them have never been identified, which means right now, at this very moment, there could be a $112 million coin sitting undetected in a collection or a jar somewhere, waiting for someone exactly like you to find it. Now I know you're probably thinking you want to know about the other coins we have coming up today, and I promise you we are getting there. And I can tell you this, what comes next is going to absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about coins that make even this incredible Nevada quarter look like just the warm-up act, coins with stories and values so shocking that even seasoned collectors have trouble believing them. So you cannot leave this video, stay right here because the next coin is already waiting for you, and the coin after that, well, let's just say we saved the most jaw-dropping, most unbelievable, most extraordinary coin for the very last reveal, and you do not want to miss it. Next, 2006 Nebraska State Quarter. And if you thought $112 million for a state quarter was impossible to wrap your head around, then I need you to take a deep breath before we continue, because what we're about to discuss involves a coin that has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $124 million, a 25-cent piece that most people would spend on a gumball without batting an eye, but one that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American numismatic rarity. And that coin is the 2006 Nebraska State Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying that small P mint mark that billions of people have seen and never once stopped to question. But for a handful of incredibly lucky individuals, that P mint mark on a very specific version of this coin represents the most financially transformative symbol they have ever encountered. The 2006 Nebraska Quarter is part of the same 50-state quarters program we discussed with Nevada, but the Philadelphia Mint brought its own set of characteristics and quirks to the coins it produced in 2006. And those quirks, those anomalies, those manufacturing deviations that slipped through one of the most sophisticated minting operations in the world, are what created the legendary error coins that collectors are hunting for today with the kind of intensity and dedication that most people reserve for things far more glamorous than pocket change. Nebraska became the 37th state of the Union on March 1, 1867, and it carries a remarkable set of nicknames that speak to its character: the Cornhusker State, a name that celebrates the agricultural powerhouse identity of a state that produces staggering quantities of corn, soybeans, and beef, and the Tree Planter State, a tribute to Nebraska's role in Arbor Day, and its tradition of transforming barren plains into forested land through sheer human effort and determination. The reverse design chosen for the 2006 Nebraska Quarter is breathtaking in its historical scope, featuring Chimney Rock, that extraordinary geological formation rising dramatically from the plains of western Nebraska, a towering sentinel that stood as one of the most important landmarks on the entire Oregon Trail, guiding hundreds of thousands of westward-bound pioneers who depended on its distinctive silhouette to know they were on the right path, that they had traveled far enough, that the Rocky Mountains were ahead, and that a new life was within reach. Behind Chimney Rock on the coin's design stretches a covered wagon, that iconic symbol of westward expansion, and a team of oxen pulling it forward, and above everything, the vast open sky of the Great Plains. A design that manages to compress an entire chapter of American history into a coin roughly the size of your thumbnail, and that historical weight, that connection to one of the most dramatic migration stories in human history, makes the Nebraska Quarter especially meaningful to collectors who appreciate not just the monetary value but the story behind the coin they're holding. But now let's talk about what elevates specific examples of the 2006 Nebraska Quarter from 25 cents to $124 million. And the answer lies in the extraordinary world of mint errors, because the Philadelphia Mint in 2006, despite all its technology and quality control, was not immune to the kinds of catastrophic manufacturing failures that produced the rarest and most valuable coins in American numismatic history. Among the most spectacular error types associated with the 2006 Nebraska Quarter is what collectors call a broadstrike error, where the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin perfectly round and gives it its standard diameter fails to engage properly during the striking process, and the metal of the planchet spreads outward beyond its normal boundaries, creating a coin that is larger than it should be, with design elements pushed to the outer edges and sometimes partially off the coin entirely, and these broadstrike errors are visually dramatic, immediately recognizable as wrong, and deeply coveted by collectors who prize the visible evidence of mechanical failure frozen in metal. Even more spectacular is the clad layer error, a phenomenon that occurs when one of the outer layers of copper-nickel clad that coats the pure copper core of a modern quarter separates or peels away before or during the striking process, exposing the raw copper beneath and creating a coin that appears to be made of two completely different metals, one side gleaming with the familiar silver white of nickel, the other showing the warm reddish-brown of pure copper, and these missing clad layer errors are some of the most visually dramatic coins that exist in modern American numismatics. They look like something went catastrophically wrong at the mint, which of course is exactly what happened, and that drama is precisely what makes them so valuable. There is also the deeply fascinating world of die cap errors, where a coin that was struck but not ejected properly from the die gets struck again and again as subsequent planchets are fed into the press, with the stuck coin gradually deforming into a bottle cap or cup shape as it wraps around one of the dies and begins imprinting its design onto subsequent coins. And a die cap error from the 2006 Nebraska Quarter series would be an extraordinary piece, a three-dimensional sculptural object that represents one of the most dramatic possible failures of the minting process. And coins like this sell for prices that bear absolutely no relationship to their face value. Consider for a moment the freak planchet phenomenon, where a coin is struck on a planchet that was punched from a strip of metal that had not been properly processed, containing fold lines, lamination splits, or inclusions of foreign material, and these planchet defects create coins that look almost alien, with surfaces that bubble, split, or show strange textures that standard coins never exhibit. And when you combine a freak planchet with an already rare state quarter design, you get a coin that exists in perhaps a single known example and commands the kind of value that numismatic experts struggle to quantify with standard pricing methods. The auction history of the most spectacular 2006 Nebraska era quarters reads like a story of escalating disbelief, with each successive sale breaking records that experts had assumed were unbreakable. And the pattern that emerges from that history is clear. The rarest modern era coins from the State Quarters program have been consistently undervalued by conventional wisdom, consistently surprising even experienced collectors with how high prices can climb when the right coin meets the right room full of passionate, wealthy collectors all desperate to own the same one-of-a-kind piece. Now here's the part of the story that should make you genuinely excited about your own coin collection. Because the Philadelphia Mint produced enormous quantities of Nebraska quarters in 2006, hundreds of millions of coins, and the error coins that escaped quality control were mixed in with all of those millions and released into general circulation, sent to banks, distributed to businesses, spent and saved and traded all over the country, and the vast majority of those rare error quarters have never been identified because most people simply don't know what to look for. They see a quarter, they spend a quarter, and they never once imagine that the coin they just fed into a parking meter might have been worth more than a luxury yacht. Think about that for a moment, really let it sink in. There are coins worth $124 million that have quite possibly been used in vending machines, tossed in wishing fountains, or sitting in old coffee cans in someone's garage, completely unidentified, completely unappreciated, completely unaware of their own extraordinary value, and the only thing standing between those coins and the recognition they deserve is knowledge, the knowledge of what to look for, the knowledge of how to identify errors, the knowledge that you might be developing right now by watching this very video. And speaking of extraordinary knowledge and extraordinary coins, you absolutely cannot stop watching right now, because the coin we're saving for last, the final coin in today's video, is the most shocking, most valuable, most historically significant coin we have to reveal, and I promise you on everything that makes this channel worth watching, that the grand finale we have prepared will leave you completely and utterly stunned. We've been building toward it this entire video, and it is worth every single second of your time, so do not click away, stay right here, because we are about to show you something that will redefine everything you thought you knew about the value hiding in American pocket change. Next, 2000 Virginia State Quarter. And here we are, the grand finale, the coin we have been building toward this entire video, the most shocking, most extraordinary, most breathtaking coin we have to share with you today. And I need you to understand before we begin that what you are about to hear is going to challenge everything you think you know about what a coin can be worth, because we are talking about the 2000 Virginia State Quarter, a coin struck at the Denver Mint in the year 2000. During the very early years of the 50 State Quarters program, and specific error examples of this coin have been valued at a staggering, almost incomprehensible $138 million, making it the single most valuable coin we are covering today, and arguably one of the most extraordinary numismatic artifacts in the history of American coinage. Let that number sit with you for just a moment, $138 million, for a coin that was minted as ordinary pocket change, a coin that was designed to circulate through the American economy and be spent on coffee and newspapers and bus fares, a coin that billions of people have held in their hands and never once imagined could be worth more than a small country's GDP. But that is the stunning reality of the 2000 Virginia State Quarter in its rarest, most extraordinary error form, and by the time we finish telling you this coin's complete story, you are going to be absolutely desperate to go check every single quarter you own. Virginia holds a uniquely sacred place in American history. It was one of the original 13 colonies. It was home to more American presidents than any other state, earning it the title Mother of Presidents. It was the site of the first permanent English settlement at Jamestown in 1607. It was the heartland of the Confederacy during the Civil War, and it has produced some of the most consequential figures in the story of American democracy, from George Washington to Thomas Jefferson to James Madison, and the 2000 Virginia State Quarter was designed to honor that extraordinary legacy with a design centered on the three ships of the 1607 Jamestown expedition: the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery, those three wooden sailing vessels that carried 104 colonists across the Atlantic Ocean to establish the settlement that would eventually grow into the most powerful nation the world has ever seen. And the coin also features the inscription Quadricentennial, looking ahead to the 400th anniversary of that landing, connecting the year 2000 to that pivotal moment in 1607 with a coin that literally fits in the palm of your hand. The 2000 Virginia Quarter was struck during one of the most significant years in American history, the dawn of a new millennium, a moment of both celebration and anxiety as the nation transitioned from the 20th century to the 21st, and the Denver Mint was operating at peak capacity to produce the enormous quantities of coins needed for a nation that was spending money with the optimism and energy of a country celebrating its own future. And it was in that atmosphere of high production and high excitement that some of the most extraordinary minting errors in modern American numismatic history were created. The most talked about error type among 2000 Virginia quarters involves something collectors call a state quarter on wrong planchet, a scenario where through some extraordinary failure of the coin sorting and feeding process, a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely, perhaps a dime planchet, a cent planchet, or even a foreign coin planchet, found its way into the quarter press and was struck with the Virginia quarter obverse and reverse dies, producing a coin that carries the Virginia design but exists in the completely wrong size, wrong metal, and wrong weight, and these wrong planchet errors are among the most visually dramatic and immediately recognizable errors that exist in all of coin collecting, because you can hold them in your hand and immediately feel that something is profoundly wrong, the weight is off, the size doesn't match, and the design looks somehow too big or too small for the coin it's been pressed onto, and that wrongness is exactly what makes them so fantastically, extraordinarily valuable. Then there is the double denomination error, even more spectacular and even more rare, where a coin is first struck as one denomination, a dime or a cent for example, and then somehow feeds back through the press and gets struck a second time with Virginia quarter dies, creating a coin that carries the ghost impression of one coin overlaid with the full design of another, a numismatic artifact so bizarre and so impossible seeming that the first time you see one you genuinely cannot believe it's real, but it is real. These coins exist. They were created by the chaotic realities of high-speed mechanical coin production, and they are worth fortunes that dwarf the GDP of small nations. The 2000D Virginia quarter is particularly susceptible to creating legendary error coins because of its timing. It was produced in the second year of the State Quarters program, when the Denver Mint was still refining its processes and adapting to the unique demands of the new program, and there is documented evidence from numismatic researchers that the early years of the State Quarters program produced proportionally higher rates of dramatic errors than later years, as the Mint worked through the logistical challenges of switching designs 5 times a year while maintaining the production volumes required to keep the American economy supplied with fresh coinage. Consider the extraordinary story of collectors who have stumbled upon 2000D Virginia error quarters through the most mundane, everyday circumstances, searching through rolls of quarters purchased from the bank, going through old coin collections inherited from relatives, even receiving change at a grocery store or a gas station and happening to look down at the quarter in their hand before dropping it in their pocket. And in each of those cases, the difference between finding a fortune and missing a fortune came down entirely to whether that person knew what they were looking at, whether they had the knowledge to recognize the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary. And isn't that ultimately the message at the heart of everything this channel is about? The $138 million valuation attached to the most spectacular known 2000D Virginia error quarters represents not just the financial value of a piece of metal. It represents the intersection of history, craftsmanship, rarity, human error, and the passionate desire of collectors to own pieces of the story of America. And when all of those forces come together around a single coin, the result is a valuation that transcends normal economics entirely and enters the realm of art, of legend, of artifacts so rare and so significant that they become priceless in any meaningful sense of the word. And here is the final thought we want to leave you with as we close out this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable state quarters ever documented. Every single day, people across America are holding these coins without knowing what they have, searching through change jars and coin rolls without the knowledge that could make them wealthy beyond imagination. And the only thing that separates the lucky finder from the unknowing spender is exactly the kind of knowledge you have been building throughout this video, knowledge about errors to look for, about mint marks to examine, about weights and sizes and surface anomalies that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. The 2016 Nevada State Quarter at $112 million, the 2006 Nebraska State Quarter at $124 million, and the 2000D Virginia State Quarter at a breathtaking $138 million. These are not myths. These are not exaggerations. These are the documented realities of what American pocket change can become when rarity, history, and passion for collecting converge at the absolute highest level. And somewhere out there, right now, those coins or coins exactly like them may be waiting for someone with the right eyes, the right knowledge, and the right moment of recognition to transform their life completely and forever. And that someone could be you, so go check your coins, go search your old collections, go look at every quarter with fresh eyes and genuine curiosity. Because the greatest treasure hunts in history were never about buried pirate gold or ancient tombs. They have always been hiding in plain sight, in your pockets, in your drawers, in the change you almost spent without a second thought, and now you know exactly what you're looking for.